So I'm going to do you a favor, Mr. No Logic. If you can find that all in the Quran, I will delete this video and I will delete my entire channel and I will never come back to YouTube or the public sphere speaking about Islam or Christianity again. Today, I have another very exciting episode for you guys. Yes, as you can see from the thumbnail and the title, unfortunately for him, I have to address Mr. GodLogic, aka No Logic himself. But before I do that, I want to remind everyone what is the context of this video if you haven't seen the previous video.
You have many Christians across the years, Justin Martyr, for example, that calls Muhammad out, that calls Islam out, calls the Quran out as a joke. Read what Justin Martyr says about Islam. You should read it. Justin Martyr made it a laughing stock about Islam, bro.
He made the claim that Justin Martyr refuted the Prophet, peace be upon him. He refuted the Quran. He refuted Islam. And as we saw in the previous video, that would be impossible unless he believed that Justin Martyr was actually a prophet and maybe he's left Christianity to follow Justin Martyrism. I don't know. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be correct, because Justin Martyr himself died over 400 years before the Prophet, peace be upon him, was born. Some people said, well, maybe he made a mistake. Well, he repeated Justin Martyr, Justin Martyr, Justin Martyr 3 times over again. But it turns out that Mr. No Logic himself has admitted that he made a big blunder. So here's a comment which he pinned on his YouTube channel, which says, this is a comment from Mr. No Logic, making clear, or at least attempting to make clear to the public, what happened. What was this mix-up here? He says, for the Justin Martyr reference earlier in the live stream, I meant John of Damascus. I got those two mixed up, with a laughing face. So Mr. No Logic claims that he made a mistake. It very well could be the case that he had no idea about the difference between Justin Martyr and John of Damascus and just was trying to take advantage of a somewhat ignorant Muslim who appeared on his live stream. Nevertheless, let's give him for the sake of trying to be charitable with this guy, even though we don't really have any reason to do so. Let's try to be charitable with him and say, okay, Mr. No Logic, you made a mistake. You didn't mean somebody who died 400 years before the Prophet, peace be upon him, refuted the Quran and Islam. You really meant to say John of Damascus. That John of Damascus, this great saint and church father of the Christian tradition, he refuted the Quran and Islam long before Mr. No Logic appeared on the scene. Well, let's test that out. Let's see if that's actually the case. Is John of Damascus going to help him out, since Justin Martyr clearly couldn't? Let's take a look and see what John of Damascus actually wrote about the Quran and actually wrote about Islam. Okay, so this is from his book, which is called On Heresies. And the first thing to note is that he listed Islam as one of the heresies with respect to Christianity. So he already didn't even realize that it was a completely distinct and separate religion and that it was not a heretical form of Christianity. But nevertheless, we'll let, poor John get away with that, because we're being nice here today on today's video to Mr. No Logic. So let's be nice to Mr. John of Damascus too. Maybe he has a brilliant thing to say about the Quran, and maybe that's what Mr. No Logic was appealing to. So was John of Damascus, is he a good source on Islam? Does he make good arguments against Islam? Is he somebody that we should trust in terms of having superior knowledge when it comes to the Quran and Islam? Let's see, let's test it out. So this is from his book On Heresies. This is from the translation of the Fathers of the Church series, starting out on page 158 and 159. Let's see what good old Johnny had to say. He said, then, and this is a quote now, then there is the book of the camel of God. Now, in this text here, John of Damascus is explaining certain chapters or books in the Quran, even though we call them chapters. Okay, he used the word book, or no big problem. He meant to say chapters of the Quran. So he explains that there's a chapter called the women, and then he mentions eventually that there's a chapter or a book in the Quran called the Camel of God. Now let me just stop right there. Muslims and even maybe non-Muslims that are familiar with the Quran, are you guys aware of any surah or chapter in the Quran which is called the Camel of God? I'm not at all. I've read the Quran many times, and I'm not aware of a chapter or book in the Quran which is called the Camel of God. Okay, but Jake, don't make a big deal. Maybe he just got the name of the chapter wrong, but then what he explains, we're going to find in a different chapter in the Quran, right? Unfortunately for Mr. No Logic, and unfortunately for John of Damascus, that's not the case at all. In fact, if you look in the footnote under right where that claim is made by John of Damascus, the translator of the text says under the 112th footnote, not in the Quran. Wow. The translator obviously knows that St. Johnny must have been up late drinking something that night. I don't know what it was, or smoking something, but he certainly had no idea what he was talking about when he claimed that there was a book or chapter in the Quran called the Camel of God. But hold on a second. As I said, let's give him a chance. Maybe the story that he tells, we're going to find it in another chapter of the Quran. Maybe it's in a different surah. Let's see if that's the case. Then there is the book of the Camel of God. About this camel, he says, talking about the prophet in the Quran, he says that there was a camel from God and that she drank the whole river and could not pass through 2 mountains because there was not room enough or not enough room. There were people in that place, he says, and they used to drink the water on one day while the camel would drink it on the next. Moreover, by drinking the water, she furnished them with nourishment because she supplied them with milk instead of water. Then, because these men were evil, they rose up, he says, and killed the camel. However, she had an offspring, a little camel, which he says, when the mother had been done away with, called upon God, and God took it to himself. Then we say to them, meaning then we say to the Muslims, this is John's big argument. You guys ready? Where did that camel come from? And they say it was from God. Then we say, meaning the Christians say to the Muslims, was there another camel coupled with this one? And they say, no. Then how, we say, was it begotten? For we see that your camel is without father and without mother and without genealogy, and that one that begot it suffered evil. Neither is it evident who bred her, meaning where did this camel come from? And also, this little camel was taken up. So why did not your prophet, with whom, according to what you say, God spoke, find out about the camel, where it grazed, and who got milk by milking it? Or did she, referring to the camel, possibly, like her mother, meet with evil people and get destroyed, meaning this another camel? Or did she enter into paradise before you, so that you might have the river of milk, that you might have the river of milk that you so foolishly talk about? For you say that you have 3 rivers flowing in paradise, one of water, one of wine, and one of milk. If your forerunner, the camel, is outside of paradise, it is obvious that she has dried up from hunger and thirst, or that others have the benefit of her milk. And so your prophet is boasting idly of having conversed with God because God did not reveal to him the mystery of the camel. Wow, this is a mystery of the camel, this story. But if she is in paradise, she is drinking water still. And you, for lack of water, will dry up in the midst of paradise of delight. And if there being no water because the camel will have drunk it all up, you thirst for wine from the river of wine that is flowing by. You will become intoxicated from drinking pure wine and collapse under the influence of the strong drink and fall asleep. Then, suffering from a heavy head after sleeping and being sick from the wine, you will miss the pleasures of paradise. Oh man. So, the camel went up to heaven, is in paradise, and drank up all the water. So by the time Judgment Day comes and the Muslims, the believers, make it to paradise, they have nothing left to drink. They have no water left to drink. So then they have to drink the wine. And supposedly this wine gets us all drunk. Astaghfirullah. And then we fall asleep and we don't actually enjoy the true blessings of paradise. Wow, what a great refutation from Johnny Boy. But anyway, he continues on and says, then suffering from a heavy head after sleeping and being sick from the wine, you will miss the pleasures of paradise. How then did it not enter into the mind of your prophet that this might happen to you in the paradise of delight? He never had any idea of what the camel is leading you to now. Yet you did not even ask him when he held forth to you with his dreams on the subject of the three rivers. We plainly assure you that this wonderful camel of yours has preceded you into the souls of asses, where you too, like beasts, are destined to go. And there is the exterior darkness and everlasting punishment, roasting fire, sleepless worms, and hellish demons. So there you have it. John of Damascus initially starts off by telling us there's this book in the Quran, where there is no separate books, but let's say he meant chapter. There's this chapter in the Quran which is called the Camel of God. Well, there is no chapter in the Quran called the Camel of God, and the own translator of the text admits that in the 112th footnote of the text. But let's give him a break. Maybe this story is in another chapter of the Quran. And on he tells a story about the she-camel who got so big from drinking that they couldn't even fit between two mountains. And then it had a baby, another camel, and this camel, I guess we couldn't find where this camel went. And so John goes on to tell a story about how this camel went up to paradise and got there before us. And what do you know? It's been drinking up all the water. And by the time we got to paradise, the river in paradise of water ran out of water. So all of the believers were stuck drinking wine, which intoxicated us. We fell asleep and then we no longer enjoyed the pleasures of paradise. Now, is this story in a different surah or in a different chapter of the Quran? Is this anywhere to be found in the Quran for Muslims or non-Muslims out there that have read the Quran? No, of course not. This story is absolutely nowhere found in the Quran whatsoever. So either Johnny Boy was so ignorant of what the Quran taught that he came up with this one day, maybe when he drank too much and fell asleep, or he's just outright a liar, which as I had a discussion with a Christian on my channel previously about this topic, he admitted he actually was doing the same thing as GodLogic, bragging about how John of Damascus, hundreds, over 1,000 years ago, had refuted Islam. And then when I showed him how ridiculous that claim was, and that John of Damascus was clearly either ignorant about Islam or a liar by making up this story, he said, yeah, you know what, you're right, Jake. John of Damascus was a liar, and he repeated it 2 or 3 times. I wonder if GodLogic will do that. Will GodLogic, after seeing this video, after we gave him a break on saying Justin Martyr, and he clearly says that he meant, oh, it was John of Damascus, maybe John of Damascus is going to save him, right? But now we see this terrible argument and representation of Islam in the Quran from John of Damascus. So he doesn't really seem like a good source for GodLogic to be bragging about, claiming that he defeated Islam over 1,000 years ago. So is GodLogic going to come out and actually admit that John of Damascus is not a good source to go to in terms of refuting Islam? Because when he makes up an entire story like this that doesn't exist in the Quran, he's not really a trustworthy source. He's an ignoramus, and at worst, a complete liar and fabricator of the entire story. So it's quite shocking that GodLogic, or GodLogic for that matter, would attempt to hide behind somebody like John of Damascus. Let's try to even be more gentle with these guys, John of Damascus and Mr. GodLogic. Let's try to be more charitable. Maybe John of Damascus was talking about another story in the Quran where there's a mention of a she-camel. Okay, let's take a look. Let me share my screen here, and let's go to chapter 11 of the Quran, verse number 64. It says this, "And O my people, this is the she-camel of Allah. She is to you a sign. So let her feed upon Allah's earth, and do not touch her with harm, or you will be taken by an impending punishment." But they hamstrung her. So he said, and this is talking about Saleh, but they hamstrung her. So he said, enjoy yourselves in your homes for 3 days. That is a promise not to be denied. So when our command came, we saved Salih and those who believed with him by mercy from us, and saved them from the disgrace of that day. Indeed, it is your Lord who is the powerful, the exalted in might. So as we see here, there is a mention of a she-camel in the Quran. It doesn't have its own chapter, but there is a mention of a she-camel. But there's absolutely nothing of a mention about a she-camel drinking so much and became so huge that she couldn't even fit between two mountains, and then they couldn't find her or her offspring of the she-camel. And there's a possibility that the she-camel went up to paradise and actually drank all the water, so that by the time we made it to Judgment Day and Muslims got there, we had nothing to drink, and so we only had intoxicating wine to drink, in which Muslims got drunk off it, fell asleep, and missed out on the blessings and pleasures of paradise. All of that, the entire story basically, besides the mere mention of she-camel, is nowhere to be found in the Quran whatsoever. So did John of Damascus completely fabricate this? Is he a liar? Or at best, is he so ignorant that he thought this was in the Quran, even though it wasn't? In either case, how can anyone take him or his words about Islam seriously? So we let you off the hook with Justin Martyr. We say, oh, he mixed it up, you know. We can't blame No Logic because he doesn't do much reading. He doesn't really know the difference between Justin Martyr and John of Damascus. So he maybe just made an innocent mistake. He repeated it 3 times, but we'll give it to him, even though it's probably just because somebody notified him during the stream, in the live stream, or afterward and said, hey, dummy, you got the wrong person here, man. So, but anyway, we'll give it to him. Innocent mistake, right? He just meant John of Damascus, the great refuter of Islam over 1,000 years ago. But then he comes with this ridiculous story. So therefore, we're back to square one, GodLogic, Mr. No Logic. You know what? Should we be so surprised of Mr. No Logic? Should we be so surprised of the sad state of Christian apologetics when they're merely following in the footsteps of their great saint, John of Damascus? Should we be so surprised about the ridiculous arguments that we hear from modern Christians today when they're going back to their great predecessor who fabricated an entire story about a she-camel in paradise, which is nowhere to be found anywhere in the entire Quran? Therefore, it's not really any surprising to us. All they're doing is following in the great footsteps of their great church father and saint, John of Damascus. But unfortunately, he really doesn't have much to offer us at all. I wonder what Mr. No Logic is going to do in response to this video. Is he going to defend John of Damascus? Is he going to show us where in the Quran this story of this she-camel exists? So I'm going to do you a favor, another one, Mr. No Logic. I'll make the same challenge. If you can find this story of the she-camel going to paradise and stealing the Muslims' water in the afterlife, if you can find that all in the Quran, I will delete this video and I will delete my entire channel, and I will never come back to YouTube or the public sphere speaking about Islam or Christianity again. That's all you have to do. Since your great saint and church father, according to you, Mr. No Logic, refuted Islam over 1,000 years ago, John of Damascus, all you have to do is defend him and show us where this brilliant argument he got that he says is in the Quran, just show us where it is there, and I will delete this video and eat my words and delete my channel for good and never speak about Islam or Christianity again in the public sphere. But guess what? You won't meet that challenge because you'll never be able to do it. And you'll never come out and actually admit, wow, yeah, John of Damascus was wrong about that. He was either really misinformed about Islam or was just completely and blatantly a liar. You'll never do that because that would be too tough for you to admit. On the reverse, you'll probably ignore this and keep going back to your ridiculous live streams where you take advantage of Muslims or attempt to take advantage of Muslims who don't really know that much, like the poor fellow who was on there when you made the claim about Justin Martyr. If that was in front of me, I would have corrected you immediately and you would have been made a laughingstock, like you said, your words, right on your live stream. But you're not interested in that. You're not interested in honesty. So now I want to talk to the Muslims and let people know this guy is not honest whatsoever. You have no business going on his live streams, wasting your own time, wasting the viewers' time, even if there are a small number of viewers in the audience that are sincere and looking for the truth. You're wasting your time because this guy is a charlatan. He's an idiot. He's not intelligent. He doesn't do any genuine research. And he himself is the follower of John of Damascus, who is using ridiculous arguments like this with no evidence to support his claim. And another point about the story, which if John of Damascus actually knew the Quran and knew Islam, yes, the Quran talks about there will be wine in paradise, but it also makes it very clear that it's not going to be intoxicating. Muslims don't believe that the wine in paradise is going to be intoxicating. So even if the water ran out from the she-camel drinking it all, which is ridiculous, we wouldn't get drunk off the wine and fall asleep and miss out on the pleasures of paradise anyway, John. So that was another ridiculous claim. Also, aren't you aware of the fact that we Muslims believe, and isn't John aware of the fact that Muslims believe that paradise is everlasting? That the rivers in paradise are going to be everlasting? That the rivers of milk, honey, water, and wine are not going to dry out? Aren't you aware of that, John? Aren't you aware that if you knew that there was going to be a river of water in paradise, let's say, why would you think that would ever run out? If it's not going to run out from all of the believers who are there, inshallah, in paradise, if it's not going to run out, the water of milk, honey, or whatever, water is not going to run out in virtue of all of the believers drinking it, then how in the hell would it run out from merely a she-camel drinking it all? And therefore we're going to be stuck with intoxicating wine to drink when there is no intoxicating wine in paradise. Completely ridiculous, a complete joke. So just when you thought that Mr. No Logic may have been a little bit off the hook because he mixed Justin Martyr and John of Damascus up. Even though, notice, he didn't say he misspoke, he says he mixed them up. So he did intend to say Justin Martyr, but he mixed it up. He got confused between Justin Martyr and John of Damascus. He didn't know who lived when and who actually wrote what against Islam. So even though we gave that to him, we noticed it didn't help him. It just buried him and embarrassed him even further, because John of Damascus, if that's where he's taking his information from on Islam and following in his apologetic footsteps, then it's no surprise that you're a complete joke, and many other Christian apologists are a complete joke today. With that being said, guys, I don't think he'll meet my challenge. What do you think? You think he'll meet my challenge and show us in the Quran where this story of the camel going to paradise and drinking up all of the water of the believers is? You think he'll meet that challenge? If so, then you guys who like my channel will be sad, because that would mean I'll have to delete my channel. But I don't think that's going to happen, and I guarantee you, neither do you guys. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and putting the notification bell on to get notified in the future for future videos. Consider giving this a thumbs up and commenting and letting me know your thoughts on the video. Also, share this with your friends and family or on your social media platforms, no matter how big or how small they are. And if you want to go above and beyond and support the channel, as I'm doing this full time now, then please consider donating at the GoFundMe link, which is pinned at the top of the description of this video, as well as my other videos. With that being said, guys, until next time, I look forward to seeing you, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.